Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Perspectives Prime, special edition. We've convened here this evening for a very, very special program. First of all, we regret that we are coming in later than we advertised. We advertised this program to start at 8 p.m., and here we are at 8:30. And our regrets for coming in almost half an hour later. We thank you for staying with us with anticipation for those of you joining us, and we hope we didn't throw any of you off your schedule. I'm the moderator, Brenda Batiste. This evening, this program really is to share with you, the general public, the insightful science research that was undertaken by researchers at St. George's University about Grenada's first COVID wave. And with me here is one of our regular expert, one of the two expert talk panelists who normally share perspectives on a Monday morning, Mr. Byron Campbell. We're missing Senator Christopher Diali. Perhaps he can join us at some point in the program from somewhere in Grenada. But here we are bringing the special edition of the program to you. Good evening, Mr. Campbell.
Good evening, Brenda, and welcome all. We hope you will join us this evening. It will be an interesting program. Please stay with us.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Just to let you know, viewers and listeners, and thank you, those of you who already joined us across the various platforms, everyone who share the Perspectives program, thank you and welcome. Of course, those of you Carriacou, Pity, Martinique, those of you with us on Mikey Live or Perspectives page, TNR Communications, Party Grenada, wherever you are, MTV, we thank you for joining us. This evening's program is going to be two-part. The researchers, they are going to make the presentation on their findings, and at the end of that presentation we are going to have a question and answer segment. Now, at the beginning of this year, St. George's University developed a state-of-the-art diagnostic molecular facility on campus to provide the campus and the Grenadian community with timely and appropriate diagnostic testing services in Grenada and for the region. Now, previously, most diagnostic testing had to be sent outside of Grenada for analyses, often creating longer lead times for receiving those results. The laboratory is housed in the Windward Islands Research and Education Foundation, referred to as Windrift, and it's housed in that building, and it was constructed to meet World Health Organization or WHO standards. Dr. Callum McPherson, Director of Research at SGU, envisions that the lab will further enhance international and regional partnerships with groups such as the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, the Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARPHA, and universities worldwide, and has recommended this expert panel, who were a key part of the COVID-19 response, in collaboration with the Ministry of Health, to share data-driven facts about the COVID-19 pandemic in Grenada. Now, this panel of experts include 4 Grenadians, had to throw that in, 4 Grenadians of whom we are very proud, and 1 Trinidadian. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce our special panelists, our researchers. Vanessa Matthew Belmar is from Grand Bras in St. Andrew. She attended St. Joseph's Convent in St. Andrew and then obtained a Bachelor of Science in Life Sciences and a Master of Science in Bacteriology at St. George's University. Currently, she is a PhD student at SGU and has been part of the Windrift Testing team for SARS-CoV-2, which is COVID-19, from March 30th, 2020 to present. Dr. Jane Narelle is a University of Cambridge Medical School graduate. She completed a medical clerkship at the Grenada General Hospital in 1989 and moved to Grenada with her family in 1994. She is a past director of the Grenada Olympic Committees and served as the chef de mission of the Grenada Tokyo Olympic team. She's also a member of the Pan Am Women's Commission and currently works as a physician at the Grove Polyclinic, where they do COVID testing and vaccinations. We welcome Tanya Khan. Tanya Khan earned her master's in public health from St. George's University. She has been involved in COVID-19 vaccinations since the arrival of the vaccine on the island since April 2021 and is currently the assistant coordinator for the new Guelph COVID-19 polyclinic. She's also involved with PCR testing in the Windrift laboratory at SGU. Ms. Khan is also actively involved in research regarding cervical cancer screening and HPV genotype distribution in Grenada. Nikita Kajo. Nikita, she graduated from St. George's University with a master's in public health epidemiology in 2016. She has been involved in numerous Windrift projects relating to dengue, chikungunya, and Zika projects, which have involved many international collaborations funded by grants from NIH, USAID, and Janssen's. Ms. Kajo is currently the Screening Testing Program Manager for COVID-19 at SGU Windrift. Nandi Noel attended St. Joseph's Convent, St. George's, and TAM CC. She has a bachelor's degree in chemistry and is currently working towards a Master of Science in Research and Bioethics. From March 2020, Ms. Noel has been a mission critical worker with the Windrift response team and has been involved in screening, surveillance, and laboratory diagnostics, as well as volunteering with the National Vaccination Drive. It is a pleasure to welcome our panel of experts as they make their presentation on a closer look at the St. George's University and Windrift's contribution in the fight against COVID. Panelists, over to you.
Thank you very much. There are 5 of us here tonight presenting as members of the Windrift supported by St. George's University. We've been invited here tonight to speak to our community about COVID-19, our work in the vaccination program, the COVID testing, screening, and surveillance, and to address your concerns on these topics. So we thought firstly we'd start with a little background on vaccination so that you can have a better understanding of how the COVID vaccine came about and why it's so important. The first vaccination was created a little over 225 years ago. In 1796, a British doctor by the name of Edward Jenner created the first vaccine against smallpox, a disease that killed almost 300 million people worldwide. We have forgotten how devastating smallpox was, and the photo here that you can see is a reminder of just how bad this disease was. The vaccine helped reduce the risk of catching smallpox, and the people were brave enough at the time to trust the scientists, and they took the vaccine. Smallpox is one of only 2 diseases that have been eradicated from the world. That means they're no longer in the world. And the second is rinderpest, which was a cattle plague and caused mass famine due to the death of the cattle, and both were eradicated by a rigorous, successful vaccination campaign. Now, you can see here all the diseases that we vaccinate at present. Our generation is fortunate. We no longer have to worry about these illnesses that we see on the slide killing our loved ones. And this is something our grandparents didn't have the luxury of. Our old general hospital used to have a room downstairs off the male medical ward where tetanus patients were kept in darkness to try and manage the terrible spasms, which you can see in the picture on the left. In our grandparents' day, children just would not come back to school after the summer holidays. They had died either from measles or polio, or had to live their lives out in something like the iron lungs that you can see on the right-hand side. And this is the reality of our lives across the world and in Grenada before vaccination happened. So we allow our children to be vaccinated to go to school, and we don't worry. We know it protects our children and we trust the vaccines. And now we're being asked as adults to vaccinate against COVID-19 because that will also protect us. Now, it's important to remember that we already do this as adults, and people don't seem to realize that. If you travel to parts of, say, South America or Asia, you have to vaccinate against yellow fever. In fact, you can't even enter the country without this. When we took the national team to the Commonwealth Games in India, all the athletes, the coaches, we all had to vaccinate against yellow fever. Anyone who travels to an endemic area has to vaccinate. And it's been like this for years. So it's not a new thing to have to vaccinate to travel. Now, prior to COVID-19, Grenada had an incredible attitude towards vaccination. I mean, we're literally one of the best countries in the world. And it's shown by the 96 to 98% vaccination rate by our school children over the last 30 years. And the picture you see here is of the chief community health nurse receiving a trophy from Windrift for being the parish with the highest vaccination rate for school children. So Tanya, pass over to you now.
So let's take a closer look at what the COVID vaccine really is. We take vaccines in order to teach our immune systems to recognize and defend against harmful germs, such as bacteria and viruses. As you can see on the screen, there isn't just one type of vaccine that we use today. All of the illnesses that Dr. Narelle mentioned earlier have different types of vaccines associated with them. So every one of you watching tonight has had at least 3, if not 4, of these different types of vaccines as a child. And specifically, the COVID-19 vaccines that we have in Grenada are either viral vectors or mRNA-based. Most people don't seem to realize that the journey to developing a vaccine for COVID really started about 2 decades ago. That's almost 20 years, right? It's important to understand that coronavirus is a family of viruses, which includes illnesses that we have seen in the past, and that includes the common cold. COVID-19 is not the first coronavirus that we have encountered, but it is the one that has figured out how to spread rapidly and silently across the globe. So, back in 2002, there was an outbreak of SARS-CoV-1, or severe acute respiratory syndrome. This was the first coronavirus pandemic that we have seen. SARS-CoV-1 had the same spike protein on its surface that we see in COVID-19, and therefore also had the same mechanism of invading cells. At the time, the world scientists came together to start the development of a vaccine against SARS. But thankfully, the pandemic ended quickly because there were no asymptomatic individuals that we see with COVID-19, meaning that it was easier to track and stop the spread of SARS. The next coronavirus pandemic was in 2012 with the deadly Middle East respiratory syndrome, also known as MERS-CoV, which killed almost 40% of those infected. What is interesting about MERS is that human-to-human transmission was quite rare, and this helped stop the spread. Again, many academic institutions came together to develop a vaccine against this coronavirus, MERS-CoV. So essentially, in 2019, when SARS-CoV-2, or coronavirus disease 2019, was discovered, scientists had already been studying and learning about the virus and the vaccine for 19 years, which is a fact that most people are not aware of. When the virus began spreading around the world, we already had the technology and the knowledge to develop the vaccine. It was just a matter of making it specific to COVID-19 and making the process more efficient. So the different trial phases were done simultaneously, which allowed for the record-breaking rapid production of the vaccine. Multiple pharmaceutical companies and academic institutions really stepped up to the plate and came together to develop a range of vaccines, including some of those that you may be familiar with, including the Oxford AstraZeneca, the Pfizer BioNTech, and the Johnson & Johnson vaccines. All of these vaccines went through rigorous safety protocols and were screened by the World Health Organization and the CDC before release. It is a big misconception that taking a vaccine means that you can never catch the illness. This is not the case for any of the vaccines, including the COVID-19 vaccines. In fact, the official definition of vaccination, according to the CDC, is the act of introducing a vaccine into the body to produce protection from a specific disease. The COVID-19 vaccine, as we will discuss, massively reduces the chance of infection, therefore producing protection against acute illness, long COVID, and death. And now I'm going to pass it over to Jane.
So recently at St. George's University, they hosted their annual research day, where we presented our findings regarding the COVID-19 vaccination program. We'll share the highlights with you now. Looking at the key events regarding COVID-19 in Grenada is how it corresponded with trends in the vaccination uptake. And this has helped us to understand you, the Grenada public, and how you have actually responded to the vaccination. On February the 12th, 2021, the Prime Minister took the first dose of AstraZeneca vaccine in Grenada. And at the time, Grenada was very fortunate. We had only one active case and only one death. So frontline workers were given the first priority, which included the police, our security officers, our healthcare workers. But unfortunately, we didn't get a great uptake at the start by this group. So we rapidly released it to the general public who were desperate to be vaccinated. Now, given how things are going these days, you would not believe how long the queues were at the vaccine centres. Now, initial vaccination numbers were encouraging, but they quickly slowed when an article appeared suggesting that the AstraZeneca vaccine that we had was responsible for sudden deaths due to blood clots. 20 of the 27 European Union countries suspended the use of AstraZeneca. A few days later, the European Medicine Agency found that AstraZeneca was not associated with a higher risk of blood clots, and the World Health Organization called for the vaccine to start being used again. But sadly, local uptake of the vaccine slowed and it's never really recovered. And I'll go into more details about this concern a little later in the presentation. Now, on April the 9th, we received 24,000 doses of AstraZeneca vaccine into our vaccine program through the COVAX facility. So Tanya, you can carry on.
Sure. Thank you, Jane. So here we can see the vaccination rates going up a little bit again, and this can be attributed to the frontline workers getting their second dose. And on April 15th, St. George's University became the first entity to mandate vaccinations and also began denying entry to the campus for unvaccinated individuals starting on June 1st. On May 14th, we had a huge increase in people getting vaccinated. And this occurred after the government announced that the AstraZeneca vaccines were about to expire. After this, the numbers dipped yet again. And on June 25th, we had our daily high of vaccines administered after another announcement stating that another batch of the AstraZeneca vaccine was expiring. In the next few months, in the period between July and mid-August, we see a dip in vaccinations yet again, and this was due to the announcement that Grenada would be receiving the Pfizer vaccine from the United States. Many people decided that they would wait for the Pfizer vaccine instead of taking the available AstraZeneca on island. On August 19th, Grenada received 29,250 doses of the Pfizer vaccine, and a few days later, Pfizer also received U.S. Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, approval. Here you can see an overall increase in vaccinations, which can be attributed to the arrival of the Pfizer vaccine, which the Grenadian public seemed to trust more compared to the AstraZeneca vaccine. Pfizer was also administered to children 12 years of age and up, starting on the 23rd of August. In addition, around this time, there was a spike in COVID cases, indicating community spread in Grenada. And we also recorded our second death, which led to some panic within the public. Since then, the average vaccination uptake has remained relatively steady, around 500, 600 doses per day. And you can see it is higher than it ever was compared to when we just had the AstraZeneca. And now I'm going to pass it over to Jane.
Thank you, Tanya. So overall worldwide, according to the current World Health Organization's COVID-19 dashboard, there have been over 257 million cases of COVID in the world to date, which have affected every corner of the world. In terms of deaths, there have been over 5 million deaths worldwide. If you take a look at these two graphs, there are patterns of peaks and dips that correlate between cases and related deaths. So we need to be very mindful in Grenada that even though we are coming out of our first major peak and into a dip, we cannot become complacent and think that we are different from the rest of the world, because we are not. There is a huge possibility that Grenada could suffer from another peak at any time. Now, across the world, over 7 billion doses of vaccine have been given. Grenada, at this point, by the last dashboard, has given 74,204 doses total. Now, Grenada has been hesitant over taking the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. However, the Oxford AstraZeneca has been used by 33 more countries in the world than Pfizer. The map you can see here shows the overall confidence worldwide in both these vaccines. Sadly, Grenada is really lagging behind our fellow Caribbean islands in vaccine uptake, as you can see. We're right down there at the bottom. We're just number 5 off the bottom. And honestly, come on, guys. I mean, when has Grenada ever been at the bottom of anything? Not good enough. Now, no one can argue that vaccination has not prevented death and serious illness from COVID-19. Now, as you can see from the graph here, using current data from the National Statistics government body in the United Kingdom, unvaccinated people, shown in blue, have a significantly higher death rate compared to the fully vaccinated individuals, which is shown in green, and it's very obvious on this graph. So it significantly lowers your chance of dying from COVID-19. There are some individuals out there who think that they can avoid the vaccination and deal with COVID if they get infected. They feel they're strong, they're healthy individuals who can fight the infection. But we must remember that this is a new and unpredictable disease, and our population does not have natural protection against it. And even more shockingly, we're now learning, as time has passed, that COVID not only has a short-term deadly first phase, but that there are severe long-term effects. Post-COVID syndrome, which is now known as long COVID, is a reality. Even patients who are asymptomatic are developing these symptoms. They're life-debilitating symptoms, and they occur for months after infection. These can include shortness of breath, chest pain, brain fog, joint pain, stroke, very worryingly, early new onset dementia, and long-term flu-like symptoms. Now, worryingly, multi-system inflammatory syndrome is now not only being seen in adults, but also in some children with a COVID infection or directly afterwards. And this highlights the importance not only for adults to vaccinate, but also our children from 12 and over, which we can vaccinate against and should be vaccinated as soon as possible. So Tanya, your go again.
Dr. Narelle and I have been in the thick of the vaccination program since the arrival of the AstraZeneca vaccine back in February. For the past few months, we have been based at the New Guelph Polyclinic, serving the Western Corridor, including the parishes of St. John, St. Mark, and St. Patrick. The Guelph area was actually the epicenter of our recent wave of cases. We have talked to thousands of people at the vaccination centers, pop-up clinics, and throughout the community. We have met many Grenadians who are scared of taking the COVID vaccines. We have found that some of you just needed us to sit with you and address your specific personal questions in order to put your mind at ease before taking the vaccine. Your concerns are important to us, and I want you to know that we have heard you and that we really want to help you. Of all of your concerns, these are the top 10 reasons that people are hesitant about the vaccine. I am sure that many of you will recognize some of these reasons within yourselves. So let's go through them one at a time. First of all, we all realize that there is a lot of misinformation out there. Every day, you can go onto Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter, and TikTok and find hundreds of people and influencers offering their biased opinions and taking facts out of context. You have to be careful of where you are getting your information from. There are credible sources backed by solid, critically reviewed, unbiased research, such as the WHO, the CDC, and even major universities, such as the University of Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, and Johns Hopkins, to name a few. You cannot take the opinions of film stars, pop artists, or just anybody from the internet to dictate what you will do with your life. If you have concerns about the vaccine, please come out to the clinics and we would be happy to answer any of your questions.
To address number 2 on the list is the concerns regarding the blood clot scare with AstraZeneca. Now, if we look at the current statistics on cases in the UK, which is one of the biggest users of the vaccine, you can see that over 24.9 million doses of AstraZeneca have been given to date. In total, there have only been 423 reported blood clots, almost all of them with the first dose. So of these, there have been 6.6 cases per million of vein clots in the legs, which we call a deep vein thrombosis or a DVT. And only 0.7 cases per million, that's not even one case, of a brain clot. And almost all of these were treated successfully. Now, if you look at the normal population, the risk of blood clots in women taking the contraceptive pill to stop them getting pregnant is 400 per million. So think about it. We've got 6.6 for DVTs, 0.7 per million for brain clots with AstraZeneca. But if you are taking the oral contraceptive pill, it's 400 per million. And in pregnancy, the rate goes up to 2,000 per million. 31%, that's a third of all COVID patients who end up in intensive care have a clot. In fact, all people catching COVID increase their risk of a vein clot up to 1,260 per million and 93 per million for a brain clot. That's if you have COVID. Shockingly, 30% of all these clots in COVID patients are in the age group under 30 years. So basically, here in Grenada, the same as the rest of the world, before COVID vaccine even existed, we saw plenty of patients in our doctor's offices with clots, with DVTs. It's not something new. It was all the vaccine. Pill or having COVID. So we have to keep this in perspective. Now, thirdly, many people in Grenada, as we all know, suffer from things like sugar, asthma, pressure, sickle cell, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, epilepsy, prostate cancer, breast cancer, to name just a few. I'm sure a lot of you out there suffer from at least one of these illnesses. All these chronic illnesses make you much more at risk from having a serious problem if you catch COVID. In fact, people suffering from diabetes have a 100 to 250% higher risk of severe morbidity and mortality than a non-diabetic. COVID can affect all the organs of the body once it takes hold. The lungs in asthmatics, the pancreas and kidneys in diabetics. In sickle cell, it's already harder to move oxygen around the body, so imagine having COVID. And taking any of the vaccines helps protect you. You have to take your normal medication when you get vaccinated. You don't stop your normal medication. And the vaccine does not make any of these illnesses worse. And you are our top priority to get vaccinated because you are the highest risk. Tanya.
The fourth reason is that many of you are not fully understanding the benefits of vaccination. We have touched on this, but just to make it crystal clear, the COVID vaccines massively reduce the risk of catching COVID. You can still catch COVID after being vaccinated, but the vaccine prevents you from becoming severely ill, hospitalized, ending up in intensive care, having to use a ventilator, or the very worst, die from COVID-19. When we look at the age-adjusted risk of death, unvaccinated individuals have a 32 times greater risk of death than those who are vaccinated. Now, let's take a look at the 200 deaths that occurred in Grenada due to COVID-19. If you look at the graph on the screen, you can see that of the 200 people who have died in Grenada from COVID-19, only 6 were fully vaccinated. The 6 individuals ranged from ages 44 to 94, and all had significant comorbidities, including sugar and pressure. 190 or 95% of the COVID deaths were unvaccinated people. The numbers don't lie, and this is not data from another country. This is our data from our small island. The data speaks volumes about what is happening, and I think that we all need to start paying attention. The fear of needles is the next common reason for hesitancy. We understand that receiving a vaccine can be scary, as some of you have had very bad experiences with needles. We want to reassure you that your nurses and doctors are experts in administering vaccinations. They have given thousands of vaccines around the island and will ensure that you feel comfortable. Most people are actually quite surprised at how quick and painless the vaccine really is. The sixth reason for hesitancy is that many people have a waiting to see mentality. They want to wait and see what happens with the vaccine. I do understand that the COVID vaccines may feel new, but there has been a lot of time, effort, and years of research put into them. I want to reiterate that scientists have studied coronavirus vaccines for 19 years before producing the COVID-19 vaccines. In the time that you are waiting, it could be too late. COVID can be caught from a friend, a loved one, a door handle, or a can of corned beef from the supermarket. When you least expect it, you could contract the disease. And I have also heard some people say that they are strong enough to fight off COVID, but we can't forget that COVID-19 isn't just something that goes away. There are long-term effects of having COVID. Even the healthiest person can die from COVID, and we don't want that to be you.
On that note, a prime example of this comes from our dear swim coach, Natalie Regis from Fontenoy. Now, she traveled with me to Tokyo for the Olympic Games, and she and myself were therefore vaccinated to go to the Games. However, her family didn't vaccinate. Her brother Ali, who was an active, physically fit young man who ate well and exercised regularly, caught COVID. He became sick very quickly, and shockingly, he died from COVID, despite everyone's best effort to resuscitate him. It's been devastating for Natalie and her family. And since Natalie has been volunteering at Walk Polyclinic with us to try and encourage people to become vaccinated, she's gone through this tragedy and doesn't want to experience it again. So she has joined us as an advocate for vaccination. People who die from COVID, they die alone. No friends or relatives are allowed to sit with them or comfort them as they approach death and finally pass. And this is just so utterly sad. As healthcare workers, we have been there and we've seen the devastation of death. And we want to help people avoid the unbelievable heartache of knowing that this could have been avoided. Tanya.
The seventh reason is peer pressure, which we have observed on many occasions at the clinic or when we have gone into the community to speak to you. Each one of you out there has a mind of your own and are entitled to make your own educated decision. This virus has no boundaries. It doesn't matter if you are old or young. Your friend or relative may have an opinion, but at the end of the day, you should make your own decision. You will be surprised that some of those with the most opinionated views have quietly vaccinated to protect themselves. You should look at credible sources and decide if you want to protect yourself as well.
So now we move to number 8. So some of you guys out there, you've told me that you're worried about being made sterile, not being able to have kids. And honestly, there's just no truth in this rumor. There are plenty of babies being born to vaccinated parents here in Grenada. I know some of them personally, and this is happening worldwide. So you literally have nothing to worry about on that score. And so now let's look at number 9, which is a very important one, which is you pregnant ladies out there. The World Health Organization, the Centre of Disease Control, the Royal College of Obstetrics and Gynecology from Britain, the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, the Canadian College, the Australian College, you name it, all advise very strongly that pregnant women at any stage of pregnancy, or if you're planning to get pregnant, should take a vaccine. Pregnant women are a higher risk of severe COVID and its complications than a non-pregnant woman. Your body is already under pressure. Your lungs and heart are under pressure from carrying your baby. Pregnant women are more likely to end up in hospital. They're more likely to end up in intensive care, and they're much more likely to end up on a ventilator if they do catch COVID during their pregnancy, especially towards the end of their pregnancy. And they're more likely to have a premature and early delivery and end up having to have a life-saving emergency cesarean section, which can put their baby at risk and themselves at risk. They can also pass COVID to their newborn baby. So this can endanger the infant itself. It increases the risk of miscarriage early in pregnancy. And the vaccine, it has had no adverse reports of anything going wrong in pregnancy from the vaccine. No reports of causing miscarriage if it's given before 20 weeks. If you catch COVID, you're much more likely to miscarry. It may also give your baby some immunity when he or she is born, giving her some protection. So we really hope that you're going to listen to this message because it's really important. And all you pregnant women out there, you need to heed the advice that is out there in all the journals and all the top obstetrics and gynecology places, and get yourself vaccinated as soon as possible. And finally, the last one we had down at number 10. And this is breastfeeding mothers who also need to get vaccinated. There's no risk of the vaccine affecting your baby. It's not a live vaccine, so it cannot pass COVID to you. It cannot pass COVID to your baby through the breast milk. The baby will be safe, and it's protecting you and your baby. So Tanya.
I want to leave you with a final message that your decision to vaccinate affects not only you, but your family, your children, your neighbors, and your community. So far, we have lost 200 of our Grenadian people to this deadly virus. That's 200 family members lost to a disease that can be protected against. As cases soar in the Caribbean and particularly in Europe, it is clear that this has now become a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Grenada has been very fortunate to have a choice between 3 vaccines. So I urge you to take advantage of this opportunity and please vaccinate. So now that we have discussed the vaccines, I will hand you over to Vanessa to take up the story of testing.
Thank you, Tanya. As the virus was sweeping across the globe, the St. George's University Windward Island Research and Education Foundation team decided there was a need to prepare. On the 30th of March 2020, the SGU Windrift COVID-19 diagnostic team started testing for SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19 disease. We were the first island to test outside of Trinidad, and with the fastest results turnaround time when SARS-CoV-2 arrived in Grenada on March 16, 2020. Access to testing leads to the quick identification and isolation of persons infected, thus helping in the controlling of the spread of SARS-CoV-2. At the beginning of testing, all positive samples were sent down to the CAFA, Caribbean Public Health Agency, reference laboratory for confirmation. To date, we have tested 18,170 samples by real-time reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction, qRT-PCR. This test is the gold standard that is approved by the World Health Organization. It is a highly specialized skill in molecular biology, and I am a proud Grenadian hailing from the big parish of St. Andrews. I have been working in polymerase chain reaction for the past 10 years, and our lab is equipped for testing for SARS-CoV-2. Now let me explain to you the process for testing for SARS-CoV-2. First, a nurse or a doctor takes the swab and collects the samples from the back of the nose, otherwise known as the nasopharynx. Then the sample is put inside the tube with media for the virus, which allows to transport and store these samples. The sample then comes to us, the diagnostic team, and we perform qRT-PCR in the SGU Windrift laboratory. So now let me take you on a tour in the SGU Windrift state-of-the-art molecular biology laboratory. The laboratory is a World Health approved testing site for SARS-CoV-2 testing. In the past 2 years, we have achieved 100% concordance by the WHO in proficiency testing for SARS-CoV-2, meaning our tests are highly accurate. In the lab, we suit up or put on our personal protective equipment, PPE. This comprises of the N95 mask, goggles, gloves, whole suit, shoe covers, and head covers because we want to protect ourselves from the very contagious SARS-CoV-2. We then move into the extraction room where we remove the ribonucleic acid from our nasopharyngeal sample. Next, we prepare the master mix for the reaction, add it to the PCR plate. After, add the RNA and then load the PCR plate into the real-time PCR machine. All these steps are done in a careful manner in 3 separate rooms to avoid contamination. qRT-PCR is a diagnostic tool used for detection of disease-causing agent. It can find a small number of viruses present in the sample. In that, we use 2 target genes, the E gene, and the RDRP gene. If the E gene is positive, we use the second gene, RDRP, to confirm since it's very specific and only SARS-CoV-2 contains that gene. For persons traveling, this is the required test to enter certain countries around the world. Results are given within 6 to 8 hours, meaning that one can get the results the same day. We can read the results based on the CT value. The CT value is the number of cycles needed to amplify viral RNA, so it can reach detectable levels. Once you have that reading, we can tell you if you're positive or negative. For the positive, the CT value of 29 and under contains lots of virus. CT value 30, 37, moderate virus, and a CT value of 38 to 40, very low virus. So no CT value means there is no virus found. The rapid antigen is another test that is used to screen for SARS-CoV-2. It is very quick, cheap, and easy to use. For persons traveling to the United States of America, rapid antigen test is accepted. So now I will hand you over to my colleague, Nikita Kujo, for the screening and the surveillance story.
Thank you, Vanessa. Now that our viewers and listeners are aware of our testing capabilities and various certifications of the Windrift Laboratory, from the 17th of July to the 30th of August, SGU partnered with Windrift for the testing of incoming flights to Grenada. This partnership was facilitated due to the large influx of SGU students for that fall 2021 semester. However, this testing period at the airport was not limited to only SGU affiliates, but also to returning nationals and visitors. At this time, SGU affiliates must be fully vaccinated and must provide a negative PCR test 72 hours prior to their flight before entry into Grenada. Now, we were able to put together a Windrift response team, which includes nurses, to allow that seamless sample collection at the airport. After sample collection, SGU affiliates were transported to a government-approved quarantine site via an approved airport taxi. We have tested over 3,500 samples. Of those, we have identified only 12 SGU affiliates and 4 returning nationals and visitors from the Windrift testing. These individuals remain in quarantine and were cleared on a negative PCR test result. And of course, those that tested positive were isolated, retested, and cleared by the Chief Medical Officer based on a negative PCR test. Apart from testing of the airport samples at the Windrift Laboratory, testing was also being conducted at the Ministry of Health, Grenada Laboratory. During that time period, both testing facilities identified 32 imported cases. Now, of the 32 imported cases identified, 62 were returning nationals and visitors, and 38% were SGU affiliates. Now, I'd just like to reiterate here that 12 of the 32 imported cases during that period of time were SGU affiliates. These persons remain in isolation until they had a negative PCR test and cleared by the Chief Medical Officer. SGU, in partnership with Windrift, have also been conducting ongoing surveillance within the SGU community since August 2020, and it continues to do so every Tuesday and Friday. Testing for individuals within our SGU community is free of charge, as with any other public health institution, such as health centers, where you can get tested for screening purposes at no cost. Results are provided the same day or within 24 hours, allowing us to quickly identify a positive case, isolate the individual, and start that contact tracing immediately. All right, so I'll now hand you over to Nandi, who will further discuss the screening and the surveillance programs.
Thank you so much, Nikita. So in light of the increase in number of cases associated with our first Delta wave, SGU mandated that all students, staff, and faculty be tested. This mandatory screening was also open to individuals who had access to the campus. They include our visitors, our fishers, our vendors, our contractors, our significant others, and even our family members. This is especially so since our SGU community is very diverse and is represented in all parishes around Grenada. During our first screening session from August 26th through to September 5th, we have completed over 3,500 tests and identified 49 breakthrough infections. So what are breakthrough infections? Breakthrough infections are individuals that are fully vaccinated and have tested positive for COVID-19. It's important to note here that no one in our SGU community was hospitalized. We can also take this opportunity to recall and make comparison to what Dr. Jane Narelle said earlier, that scientific literature and global data shows an immense gap between hospitalizations and even death in comparing vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals. Now, of all our testing sessions, no matter screening or surveillance, results were provided within a 24 to 48 hour period. Upon discovery of a positive case, immediate contact tracing was initiated and those positive individuals were promptly isolated. They were later medically cleared by the Chief Medical Officer upon the receipt of a negative PCR test. Note that this screening session was not limited to just our SGU personnel, but it was extended by the SGU Windrift laboratory to our family members and also direct contacts of our positive cases. There were 2 mandated screening sessions. The first began 1 day prior to the announcement by the Chief Medical Officer of community spread on 27th of August 2021, and the second was from October 8th through to October 15th, 2021, where we tested over 2,500 individuals. When we compared both screening sessions, there were no positive cases identified in the second screening session. And this was mirrored by what was taking place in Grenada, with there being fewer new cases through community spread. This decrease in cases is a testament to science and its aid in being more than helpful in reducing our numbers. Countless papers have shown that the simple things, hand washing, isolation, quarantine, ongoing testing, because if you do not test, the virus does not exist. Physical distancing, mask wearing, all of these things can drastically reduce the spread of SARS-CoV-2. In addition to the mandated screening programs, surveillance sessions were also conducted for all students, staff, and faculty, or anyone that would have liked to be tested within the SGU community. Focusing on the non-mandatory surveillance session from September 7th through to October 6th, we tested again over 2,500 samples and identified 62 positive samples. Similar to the first screening session, breakthrough infections were noted. And just to reiterate, breakthrough infections are persons that are fully vaccinated and were tested positive for COVID-19. Those persons, in the same way, were immediately isolated and contact tracing again was conducted. Just note, none of the 62 individuals that tested positive were hospitalized, and none had what is known as long COVID-19. So, Nikita?
Now that we are aware of the results from the mandated screening sessions and the surveillance period, I would like to reiterate that surveillance is ongoing at the university every Tuesday and Fridays, with results being provided the same day. The next few slides will look at where Grenada ranks in comparison to the rest of the Caribbean islands. Grenada was one of 6 islands to have been exposed to the Delta wave. This Delta outbreak, or first wave, was mirrored with that of other islands, including Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Lucia, and Dominica. This graph was standardized per capita, allowing us to compare the data collected from other islands despite differences in population size. Similar to other Caribbean countries such as Dominica, Jamaica, and Barbados, just to name a few, Grenada in the second week in August observed an increase in the number of cases. Grenada, which is highlighted in pink here, had the highest number of cases per capita in mid-September. Then we can observe that drastic decline in the number of cases which may be due to the decrease in transmissibility, and of course, our adherence with protocols recommended by WHO and PAHO, which are hand washing, sanitizing, physical distancing, wearing of the face mask, getting vaccinated, and ongoing testing, which has allowed us to quickly identify a positive case and allow that contact tracing to be initiated. This graph, again, was standardized to per capita, and here we're looking at COVID-19 related deaths in the Caribbean. As you can see, Grenada is ranked very highly in the Caribbean. Reason being, this was our first wave. We had a very successful lockdown period which prevented further spread of SARS-CoV-2, thus limiting our exposure to the virus. In addition to that, in early August, our vaccination rates were 17.7, which is pretty low. These factors of a successful lockdown period resulting in a lack of exposure and low vaccination rate has made us an extremely vulnerable population. Randy?
Thank you, Nikita. So following the previous graphs per capita calculation, we also collected data on the number of cases among the Caribbean islands. And we see that Grenada has the 9th lowest number of cases in the Caribbean. Good job. Despite our number of cases and our well-publicized national vaccination campaign, Grenada still has a low vaccination rate of 30% fully vaccinated population when calculated against our total population, or 36% when using the population who are eligible to be vaccinated. And we can compare these statistics to our neighboring countries whose figures are, for example, 56% fully vaccinated in Antigua and Barbuda, or 47% in Barbados. Nikita, I think you have something to add?
Yes. Trinidad and Barbados are now seeing an increase in the number of cases, letting us know that the virus is alive, real, and is changing. We have done a great job thus far, and we need to continue to remain hypervigilant, follow the protocols. So let's protect ourselves, and especially our elderly.
So for many of us, this past year, give or take a few months, has really been a struggle. But we must continue to follow the protocols that recommend meticulous hand washing methods, wearing face masks, physical distancing, and most importantly, guys, going out and getting vaccinated. Remember that protection is a necessity that goes beyond that of ourselves. And we see the need to extend that same protection into our businesses respectfully. Vanessa?
As a Grenadian and a mother who has worked long hours conducting PCR testing to keep our communities safe, if you have symptoms or have had contact with someone with symptoms, I urge you to please get tested. And if positive, complete your quarantine to keep our children safe.
To bring back all the things that we love about Grenada, our festivities, our chance to celebrate life with our family and friends, I urge you to please vaccinate to protect our community.
As doctors, we take a Hippocratic oath to protect our patients. We have a responsibility to protect you. So please vaccinate and help protect our country. Nandi?
So we have and continue to enjoy an excellent partnership with the Ministry of Health Grenada and other collaborators. There have been many people who have contributed to this process, both in Grenada and abroad. And we would like to take this opportunity on behalf of Grenada to extend a heartfelt thanks to you. But more so, we would like to thank you, our citizens, our residents, our visitors, our returning nationals for your ongoing support, and to everyone who has been involved in this COVID-19 response. So we say thank you.
Wow. Thank you so very much, researchers of SGU. Thank you so very much for your very, very in-depth and, of course, edifying and thought-provoking information shared with us here this evening. We just allow you to catch a breather, guys. We take a quick break, and we come back with some questions for you. We'll be right back. This is Perspectives Prime.
Get vax. It's your best shot. Hello.
A message from the Ministry of Health.
More than 5 million people dying from COVID-19. And we know that this certainly is an underestimate of the true number of people who have died. We certainly don't know yet the true toll that this pandemic has taken. These 5 million people, these lives, these livelihoods, parents, children, aunts, uncles, friends. Each person has a family. Each person has a story. It's been 2 weeks at the global level where we're starting to see cases increase again. Those who haven't had access to the vaccine are left vulnerable to getting severe disease and dying, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing cases among those who are not protected. We're seeing deaths among those who are not protected, and more than 50,000 people a week are dying from COVID-19. We do need to reflect on the milestone that we have now and work as hard as we possibly can to make sure that number does not keep increasing. We have to make some changes. And if we don't do this now, when will we?
Welcome back to Perspectives Prime, everyone. And of course, if you're just joining us, I hope you're not just joining us. You'd have missed so much. But please, we encourage those of you who missed it. And then if anybody you know missed it, please go back and look at this program. I mean, Mr. Campbell, I mean, never in our history have we had this kind of research and science into, this is almost groundbreaking for Grenada.
Yeah, this is my first reflection, and this is COVID-19 101. You know, we all should have this basic information. You know, I think it's so informative. But I think also I reflect on the SGU, its role and its partnership with the Ministry of Health, and then I think of women that are Grenadians, you know, so this is rich. This
is a big deal. It's all women day, you know.
It's a big deal. Yeah, I mean, 4 Grenadians, you know, out of 5. So
see, my girl has to shout out. She's from the big parish.
Big parish. Right. So this my thing is that I know, Brenda, we have some questions. Clearly,
let's just give a shout out for big parish people.
Yeah. Okay.
To all of you women, we are so proud of you. I mean, for coming from me to you, we are so proud of you. I'm sure people looking on are proud of you as well. Absolutely. And, you know, the attention to, I am not surprised that you are researchers, because the amount of attention we put into detail and want to find out, we're curious and always want to know why. So really, really, really well done. Would you agree, Mr. Campbell?
I mean, I'm blown away, you know, Brenda. I'm just, I'm proud. I'm really, I'm happy. This is a good feeling, a good moment.
Great, it is. Yeah. And so we have some questions for you. We're going to go till about 10 o'clock, so let's keep it nice and tight. So any of you could take these, but generally, through your presentation and here, and just based on the way the science is evolving, and as researchers and scientists, ladies, what would you say to some members of the general public who think, well, you know, the science is just being dishonest?
I could take that question. Let me start that question. I think COVID has been a very interesting disease. It's very new and it's very different from what we've ever seen before. The fact that it is a pandemic across the world, the fact that it's spread across the world so fast, it's hit everyone and everything, that it's new and the scientists are learning as they go along. All right. For instance, when we first had cases, no one had any idea that we would be looking at long COVID. So the fact that 6 months has passed and now we have 6 months of data that can back up what's happening, we now see that we have long COVID. We didn't know that before. Now that we've had at least 6 to 9 months, we started vaccinating in February here in the United States, in England slightly earlier, and we now have all that data that we can now translate to useful information. So it's not that scientists have been telling lies or hiding anything. It's literally that things have been changing, and the virus itself has mutated. We have different variants. So every time something new comes up, we have to combat it. And the only way to do this is by solid research and looking at the data and having evidence for why we do things. And that's what we're trying to get across to people.
Thank you, Dr. Narelle. If you had to let our listeners, and viewers who may be community leaders, influencers, teachers, combat mistrust, if you will, out there in the community regarding vaccine hesitancy in others, what are some of the things you would say when working on the front lines to reassure people?
I think I can take that question. So Dr. Narelle and I, we have been out there in the vaccination drives, and we see these questions every day. And we want to say that the vaccination is safe, and thousands of our healthcare workers are vaccinated all around the world. And I think I want to urge viewers to take a look at the facts, right? COVID is a killer that attacks all age groups, even healthy ones, right? And especially those with comorbidities. We see young people die from this virus every day. And 9 months into vaccinating in Grenada, we are seeing that the vaccination helps. It gives you that extra layer of protection against this killer virus. And I also want to say that the risk of taking the vaccine is minuscule compared to the deadly severe effects of getting COVID. And of course, long-term COVID is especially concerning right now because we don't know what could happen in the future. I myself have taken the vaccine. I've taken 2 AstraZeneca doses and a Pfizer as well. And my entire family, friends, and colleagues have also done so. Some of my family members across the world have taken every single type of the vaccine, whether that's Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson. So it has really given me a peace of mind. So I just want to say that we have given thousands of doses, and we just feel really confident that you are much safer with the vaccine rather than not having it.
You have indicated the kind of very, very clear that we faced probably another wave. At the same time, you highlighted again very clearly, very, very clear, the 10 highest hesitancy reasons. You gave this very clear, but yet we have in Grenada, as you've outlined, also very high hesitancy levels, particularly in our rural communities. We have communities in St. John's and elsewhere in Brooklyn and other areas where the hesitancy level around youth is as high as 90%. How can we overcome this impediment? You have a fair indication of what our messaging has been, and from a public health point of view, what recommendations would you make, do you advise to overcome this level of hesitancy?
I think what I have found is that when people have come into the clinic and spoken to us, every individual who comes into the clinic, I make an effort to speak to them. This is up in Guelph in St. John's. And sometimes it's surprising. It can be the smallest thing that is stopping someone taking a vaccine. It's not the highest thing on this list. It can be just a little thing. And to take the time to speak to someone so they feel comfortable. There are very, very few people that I've spoken to who have not taken the vaccine by the time I've stopped. And I will take as long as it takes to convince them. And some people come back once or twice to talk to me. So I think for people out there, we need to try and encourage them to at least come and listen. Come to the clinic, come and speak to us. I won't ever turn anyone away. Our nurses won't turn people away. All right? You don't have to take the vaccine the first time you come. You can think about it. But I think people need to be open-minded. Our youth need to at least listen and hear, an educated side to this. Someone who has experience, someone who knows the data, someone who's up to date with the data. And we need to encourage our youth not to just, as Tanya was saying, looking at TikTok and looking at, goodness knows who are just saying the most extraordinary things with no basis to it. I think our youth have to start thinking for themselves. They have to start thinking for themselves. There's been a few times where 2 or 3 youths I've been talking to, and then if I can talk to them one at a time, and the peer pressure is off, then maybe 2 of the 3 will actually vaccinate. And then the third one often comes back the following week and vaccinates. So I think we have to talk to our youth. We have to talk to them. We have to educate them. And if it's however much effort, we have to just keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. Because every one person we make feel comfortable, it's another person that we're protecting.
We are learning that the rate of infection among children are on the increase. In Grenada here, schools have reopened more or less. What is a special message should be? What are the special circumstances? What are the difficulties with children? How do we reach more parents, particularly? What special issues you see here as we address our youth, our children, as they return to school?
I think originally people just thought that it was people who were very sick already who were going to get sick with this virus. And I think it's scary what we're seeing in Trinidad now. And again, I think it's look at the data. In Trinidad, we're seeing this huge upsurge of cases. And what we're hearing out of Trinidad is that children have started dying from this COVID. A very similar trend was seen in Britain as well. Not necessarily in the first wave, but in second and third waves, it hit the youth and the children more. And this is of great concern because we don't want to lose a single child's life. As a parent, to lose a child, it's heartbreaking, it's hard to get over. And we just don't want anyone to go through that. So I think parents have to listen. They have to listen to the education drive. Again, they can come and talk to us, right? This is a safe vaccine for children. It's as safe as the MMR we give: measles, mumps, rubella, polio, tetanus, diphtheria. All these children to go to school when they're 5 or even 3 when they go to preschool. In order to go to a Grenada school, you have to be vaccinated. You have to take these childhood vaccines. Mm-hmm. And this vaccine that we're seeing now is just as important for your children to keep safe, because we know that the children are not going to keep their masks on. However good the teachers are with them, they won't always wash their hands. They have their fingers in their mouths, they're rubbing their hair, they're rubbing their eyes. They love to hug each other. They love to hug each other, and it's hard to take that away from little children. Right. So we really need to just try and encourage more and more and get the message out that our children need protecting as well.
Absolutely. Based on the research you presented, how soon would you say is the imminent threat, if you will, of a second wave in Grenada? And what can we do about it?
I'll take that question. Currently in Barbados and Trinidad are experiencing an increase in the number of cases. And various European countries are on their 4th wave, which is among the unvaccinated individuals. So we are not out of the woods just yet. So we should continue to remain hypervigilant. We may not be able to avoid it, but we can definitely decrease its effect by getting vaccinated and adhering to those protocols, which is wearing a face mask, physical distancing, sanitizing. All of these factors decrease the ability of the virus, even before it arrives.
Yeah, it's a real uncertain time as well. I'm sure you would agree. And I am one of those, in interest of full disclosure, I am one of those who's excited for a little freedom for the holidays. But I must tell you here tonight that your presentation has brought me back to a state of soberness. And so I ask this question for a lot of people who probably were feeling like me prior. Can you explain, like really what can we do to kind of, help each other during this period of uncertainty, getting us to understand, yes, we need freedom, but the threat pervades, and the imminency of us having another September event is real. So what can you tell us to help us, just help each other along in this period of uncertainty with COVID-19?
I think I'll take this question. We can pass it along. I want to say that if you are vaccinated, please let your loved ones know, please let your colleagues know that it is a simple thing to do, and it has such an enormous benefit for everybody around you. I think we all have that responsibility. The best thing in the clinic is when somebody comes back and they bring their coworker, and they come back again the next week and they bring 2 other coworkers, and that's just the best feeling for me, I think. And in addition, I think every Grenadian can take the responsibility upon themselves to follow protocols, right? Wearing masks, washing hands, and social distancing. If you see a friend not wearing their mask, I think you should call them out on it. You should be vocal about your own safety and the safety of your fellow Grenadians. And all my friends know this, whoever's watching. I am that one person in the room who's always wearing their mask. In the car, this group knows, in the car, I'll be the one person in a huge gathering wearing a mask, and everyone looks at me like I'm crazy. But I want to say that everybody should try to model the behavior regarding the protocols, and should just take that responsibility.
And if I may add, I think it's so important, and it kind of goes back to the question that you asked, Mr. Campbell, earlier on what can we do. I think it's so important for us to really empower our community leaders, and not just our community leaders, but our younger population. You gave a statistic, Mr. Campbell, earlier that said, well, 90% of our young people are unvaccinated. I'm young, I'm fully vaccinated, I got my booster as well.
Yeah. Good.
But we have the responsibility as younger people, and even our community leaders who are vaccinated, to speak to anyone that falls within that 90% unvaccinated bracket. A few of my friends, a few of my neighbors, I sat them down, I called them, even I ran after them, and I said, hey guys, this is what's going on. Get the vaccine. You may get the virus. It's possible, as we said earlier on in our presentation, but at least it offers you some semblance of protection. And I think it's so important for us to extend our social responsibility to our friends, our families, our neighbors, our communities, and really at this point, to the entire country.
Sorry.
One note to add on that, and it's interesting, as we said at the beginning, I actually traveled to the Olympics with our Grenada team, which was an interesting experience. But we were protected, everyone on our team, bar one girl who we couldn't vaccinate at the time because she was too young for the AstraZeneca that we had in the country. We were all vaccinated. And we traveled halfway across the world, literally, to the Olympics with, there were 206 countries there. There were a huge amount of athletes there. And we were absolutely anal about wearing our masks. I was sanitizing everyone. We smelled of alcohol the whole time because we were using alcohol sanitizers. We socialized with each other, and we socialized with other people, but at a distance with our masks on. And we kept Karani safe. We kept Anderson safe. We kept Lyndon safe. We brought home our medal, and we brought home everyone from our Grenada team COVID-free. And it was because every one of the lads, they were so well behaved. They followed the rules. They wore their masks. They social distanced, and it wasn't easy. But it was more important for us to stay safe and help them gain that amazing athletic prowess that they did. The rest of Grenada would just follow Karani's example and Lyndon's example and Anderson's example and do what they're asked to do. We would be in a situation to reduce any wave that comes here. We would be in a situation to be able to socialize at Christmas in a safe way. I mean, that's a big message to put across, I think.
Yeah. I'd like to thank you very much, because it was a little nerve-wracking for us. We were concerned about those athletes, our prized athletes, if you will, those swimmers, Kirani, Anderson, and Lyndon. We were concerned. So thank you very much, Dr. Noel, for your part in ensuring that they were kept safe out there in Tokyo. If you had to give any advice to anyone now who's probably experiencing COVID symptoms, only today I was listening to a program in Barbados, and there are many people who were calling in saying, well, they have the Christmas cold. And a doctor called in on the program to say, well, you know, you don't really have the Christmas cold, you have COVID. You know, because that's what's pervading on the island of Barbados at the moment. Everybody's saying, no, we have the cold around now. But I'm saying all of this to ask the question, just in case there may be people here thinking they have the Christmas cold as well. If you're at home and you're experiencing symptoms and you're a little afraid of going out to get tested to get confirmed whether it's COVID or not, what advice can you give to people like that?
I mean, we can both take it. I'll take the first one, and the girls can talk about the testing. The test is a simple test. We ourselves are tested all the time. Because we are in contact with people, we are vaccinating with testing, and we are going home to our loved ones. We have to keep on top of it. So we regularly are tested. And trust me, it's not that bad. It takes 2 seconds to do. So people shouldn't be scared of going out to test. The only way to know that you're negative and that you're not going to pass this to your loved ones is to go get your test. And then what we try and encourage is when you get your test, if you're not vaccinated, we will sit, we will talk to you, we will go through everything. And then usually most of the time, people who have what I call a lucky escape, they then get vaccinated. So Nandi, I mean, you can just tell us a little bit. It's not a bad test, is it?
No. So we do 2 main types of tests. Vanessa would have spoken a bit of this earlier. So one type of test we use is called the PCR test. We can either collect a nasopharyngeal sample where you take swab and it goes all the way back to your pharynx, or an oropharyngeal sample. It depends on where you go, your doctors. If you have a conversation with anyone who is swabbed, then you may be able to choose whether or not you can do a nasopharyngeal or oropharyngeal. Vanessa also expounded on the process for the RT-qPCR, where that swab is placed into a viral transport medium or a VTM, taken to the lab, the RNA is extracted from it, and we make up a master mix, place it into a PCR machine. And, depending on the PCR machine, within an hour or 36 minutes, you have the results. There's another type of test called the rapid antigen test. It works similar to a pregnancy test. At least that's the way we tend to describe it to people when they come in to get swabbed. But again, there are different types of swabs we can take. Some kids ask for a nasopharyngeal swab, others ask for just a nasal swab. The difference is how far back we go into that nasal cavity. So once that is done, again, it's put into a buffer similar to a VTM or viral transport medium. We place it onto a cassette, and within 15 minutes, you get a result. So it all depends on whether we're doing screening or diagnostic testing. The rapid tests are usually just for screening, whereas the PCR is the diagnostic test. You would have heard us say before that is
I'll just have a 2-part question.
Go ahead.
That the main takeaway from this is that if you do not get tested, virus does not exist. And that puts not just yourself, but your community at risk, because if you have the virus without knowing it, you pass it along to so many other individuals if you do not follow the protocols that are mandated by the government, by PAHO or WHO. Nikita, do you have anything else to add?
There's a 2-part question here. The first one has to do with the fact that what is your analysis, and did you give any review to what we call interventions, like by the state, in terms of its modeling as far as restrictions? Is there an ideal model here, or how do you evaluate our processes here? And the second question has to do with the inequality of the virus, of the vaccine itself. So for example, we have in the UK where 80% of the population is vaccinated. Some 26% have had their booster shots. The WHO is saying, look, this is inequality when they look at the fact that in African countries, mostly it's about 7% intake in vaccine totally in terms of availability. Should I feel guilty about taking a booster shot given what the WHO is saying? What is your advice here?
So the first part of your question, you're asking about our interventions here in Grenada. Dr. Narelle earlier would have stated that the virus is real, it's changing and it's mutating, it's alive. And really, as scientists, honestly, we don't know because it's so new. But one thing we can say about the interventions that we have in Grenada, and it's proven with our first wave and the statistics that we had, yes, we had a rapid increase in cases, but we also had a rapid decrease in cases. And this is a testament to the protocols that we had in place, hand washing, the isolation, the quarantine. All of these things were a testament to and added to our decrease. And it's also seen in other countries. We're not doing anything different or new or novel here in Grenada. It's a similar protocols that we see in Trinidad and Tobago, in Barbados and Antigua. When you go on to their official websites, you see that they have similar protocols. And by the way, the WHO, the CDC, and PAHO, they're all recommending similar things. So we're not doing anything novel. I just think that at this point in time, we need to remain hyper-vigilant because there is a possibility that we can have another wave or another outbreak. Just stick with it, stay hyper-vigilant.
I think your second question, in an ideal world, every country would have the same opportunity for every vaccine. At this point, it hasn't happened. And there are African countries particularly that are still lagging behind in the vaccination program. But there are various vaccination programs for various corners of the world. And we're under PAHO, and we have been given relief vaccines to the Caribbean. And so they're for us to use in the Caribbean. They're not for us to send somewhere else. So the important thing is for us to use our quota of vaccines wisely. And I think that is what is happening. We have vaccines available. We know that over time, immunity does reduce slightly from being vaccinated. And this mirrors many of the vaccines. So if you look at hepatitis B vaccine, which as doctors, surgeons, we all have to be vaccinated against hepatitis B to protect ourselves and protect our patients. You take 3 vaccines. You take one, then you take a second one at a month's time, and you have to wait 6 months for a booster. So to have a booster is not a surprise, and it's the case with most of our vaccines. Polio, children get 4 doses of polio over their young lifetime. So the booster is not a surprise. And for us taking it, I think there are a proportion that we should encourage to have a booster in our communities, because those people like ourselves who are frontline workers and basically are in the probability or possibility of being there with high doses of vaccine. If we're testing people, then those are the kind of people who it would be sensible to give a booster to. The elderly who have a reduced immune system and won't hold their immunity as long, and those with severe comorbidities. You know, our population who have disastrous immune systems or many things. They have hypertension, high blood pressure, they have diabetes, they have asthma, they have the whole 9 yards. All right. And at this point, Grenada has the vaccines that we can spread them out fairly. Yeah, Nikita, please carry on. Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to close on that. So I think in Grenada, in terms of feeling guilty, I know that it is quite unfortunate that other countries around the world do not have the vaccine, but we have 3. And I think in the clinic, the question that we ask nowadays is, which vaccine would you like? You know? And
we have a choice.
Yes, yes.
What would you like, right? So it just makes me laugh sometimes, but we have 3 amazing vaccines, right?
Yeah.
Just take whichever one you'd like. We even have the Johnson & Johnson, which is just one dose.
shot,
So
yeah.
if you really don't like the needle, just come in, have the one dose, and you're set. You know, and I think that is something that each of us needs to take responsibility for, and we should feel maybe a little bit guilty that we have this. It's probably going to go unused if we don't use them up. So I think that's something that I would want to urge people to do.
Good point. And before we let you go, just quickly, I'd just like to ask each of you on the panel, what is your takeaway from Grenada's first wave of COVID?
Okay, so we'll start with me. Main takeaway. I think this should be drilled into everyone's head. Get vaccinated to protect yourself, and we'll see all of that reflected back into our medicine. So just go out and get vaccinated. 6 across the board, but get vaccinated.
All right, thank you. Next person.
If we are to look at that slide where we are ranked very highly in the Caribbean to COVID-19 related deaths, we are in that position because of us being that vulnerable population due to a low vaccination rate and a successful lockdown period at that point in time. The vaccination rate at that point in time was 17.7%, and 95% of the individuals that were passed were not vaccinated. So get vaccinated and adhere to protocols.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nikita. Well said.
For the viewers out there, I would like to tell them to get tested. Get tested because it will help you to protect yourself, your family, everyone in the community, and it will help to control the spread of the COVID virus. And also to the parents, because I'm a parent, please get vaccinated to protect your children because they need you to protect them.
Well said.
For me, I would say 2 things. One is please come out to the vaccination clinics and come and talk to us. We're not going to force you to take the vaccine. We just want to know what is your concern so we can address it and make you feel at ease. And I think that's one big thing. And the other thing is, please don't let your guard down. I mean, I think people have started to not wear masks, not social distance. And I think do not let your guard down. This is a pandemic and we're still in the thick of it. And yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, in the thick of it we are. Just a little reprieve. Dr. Narelle?
I think my comment comes from a medical point of view. As a doctor, and all our nurses and our healthcare workers who were in the hospital morning, noon, and night working extra hours to look after all the patients who came in with COVID-19. And we had 200 people die. And I know myself, in all the time that I've worked, I can remember every single patient that I ever had who died.
Wow.
It stays with you, it haunts you, and you never forget the faces. And for all the nurses and doctors who went through these 200 people who died, it's not just their families who suffer. The health service and the doctors and nurses, they've suffered. And if we would only vaccinate, and protect ourselves, then we would not have to go through this. The loved ones, the relatives, and the doctors and nurses who have mentally been stressed with what they've had to see and go through. So I just really put a heartfelt plea out there to people to be sensible. Please come and talk to us. I will never turn anyone away. We will never not talk to you. We will give you the time you want, and just ask the questions and take a bold step and get vaccinated and protect yourself.
All right. Thank you so very much. Thanks to all of you. I mean, this was really, really great work. Groundbreaking. Congratulations. SGU had all you gems just hiding there, researching and doing all this great work. And it's just a great opportunity to have you to present your work science-based, and the way you simplified it and made it, so presentable and palatable here for the general public this evening. We really, truly appreciate that. And of course, that sort of partnership which we have with such a great resource as the SGU. Thank you so much to all of you ladies again. I'm so proud of all of you on this panel here. Dr. Jane Noel and Tanya Khan, they were involved with the vaccine program since the onset of the pandemic, and they worked at the Polyclinic in Guelph, and Guelph is in St. John, a parish with the highest cases, as was identified as part of their research here this evening. They gave us a lot of data-driven graphics on vaccines in Grenada and the downturn following the reporting of things like blood clots in Europe, and some proficient and logical reasons for vaccine hesitancy in the community. Vanessa Matthew from the big parish, we must put that in, the molecular scientist and mother, and Nandi Noel, the young, beautiful Nandi Noel, who's a bioethics specialist. She was involved in the PCR, they were involved in the PCR testing program from the onset of the pandemic, and they were proficient in the lab-related questions and Windrift's 100% concordance with the WHO-binded testing programs, which was conducted in over 220 labs worldwide. And Nikita Kajor, of course, she was a screen testing program manager, and Nikita really gave us some sober advice here this evening, and I hope many of you took that in. She was involved in the screening and surveillance programs and outcomes. She screened all arriving passengers and can ensure that those that came into SGU did not impact the outbreak in Grenada. Carefully, I hope we were looking. There's lots of folklore surrounding our outbreak. Let's please look at the science, okay? Yeah. Let's just peel away our emotions and look at the science. Nikita, thanks for providing that in your slide. Yeah. And it provided data-driven answers to all the questions about Grenada's outbreak and recovery and the reasons for the sharp decline with the public health measures that we put in place. Ladies, again, so well done. We're gonna give you applause. And
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for this Wednesday evening, taking your time, spending your time. Best wishes. Thank you for all you have done. I know it's been a tough time, and you know, Dr. Jane Noel, I trust that it gets easier, the images of those who have passed. You know, I know how hard. It's a lot, and I know how hard that can be. Thank you for your service, each of you. Thank you for your time. SGU is well served by you, and more importantly, Grenada. Thank you so much, ladies, and have a very good evening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Yes, so, wow.
Brenda, it's a big moment.
Yeah.
You know, all I want to say in summary is that I want to encourage those of us who've not seen this to take a look at it, go back and look at this. It could save a life.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah. Well, you know us, it's probably not sexy enough.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So it's a bit long, but I know.
Yes.
But
no. You have to sit and take it in.
Absolutely.
Because you know you have to get explanations, and it's backed by this great
Facts.
work.
Facts.
Yeah. They didn't just come and say, well, I'm a doctor, so this is what it is. They provided figures and graphs and science-based evidence, which is critical. So we'd like to thank them for that. We'd like to also thank the Communications Department of SGU, particularly the Communications Director, Curie Clement, who really made all of this possible, and her Communication Specialist, Raydonna Peters, and the PR Director out in the US, Carolyn McCann. So I know Istra Bell, part of the support as well. Thank you guys so very much. Thank you, St. George's University. We truly, truly appreciate it. So, Mr. Campbell, that was our perspectives, Brian.
Yeah.
Long past your bedtime?
Almost there. I'll catch up. But it's worth it, definitely.
Yes,
you know,
yes,
I myself, I'm going to go back and have another view.
Yes,
of this,
I mean, I'm sitting here and I feel so proud. Grenada, you know, an island like ours, that we have this kind of science, this kind of world first class, information. Not many islands in the Caribbean have universities and or even know how the virus, is impacting and what's happening.
And this is one of the clear benefits of the SGU in terms of collaboration, as I mentioned, with the Ministry of Health. That benefits everybody.
I really trust our engagement with them continue. That's one of the things COVID has shown, just how much, there's a lot we do with them, but just how much we need to get closer for research and all these things that we're having here. So this is groundbreaking, and I hope they make some media rounds, so more Grenadians will see this. No, the public needs to, to eat this up, so to speak.
And what's more important too is that salient point that, look, if you're hesitant, if you have any doubts, go to the clinic, talk to someone.
Yes. Talk to someone.
Talk to someone.
Well, that's our program this evening. Thank you so very much. Those of you who joined us, see that there were some first timers. We appreciate you. You can join us on Monday mornings as well. You might be moving, but you can always catch us on your device. We come to you, bring you perspectives at 7. So from time to time, we'll pop in with these exclusives and these specials, of course, in the interest of public service and, of course, growing and developing our nation and our people and giving the right information. That is important. For everyone here, Nazim Benjamin provided our professional streaming services, Curlin Dragon, our cameraman, Blondell George, our director, and our executive producer, Richie Oliver. Well, we miss Senator Diali tonight, but of course he's quite a busy man, and he had other places to be. But I'm sure he would be very impressed by this as well. So. Mr. Campbell, thank you so very much. Get back safe to your lovely village.
Thank you.
And to everyone, thank you very much. Continue to have a good Wednesday evening. I am Brenda Batiste for all of us here. It's been a pleasure to bring this special edition of Perspectives Prime. Stay safe. Have a very, very good night. Until so long.